Good morning and welcome to the Lille Regional Championships over here in France. We're on day 2. My name's Ross Gilbert and I'm joined by the lovely Benji Hutchings. How you doing, Benji?
I am doing great. I actually had a pretty good sleep last night. I didn't think I would, very excited for today, but slept like a baby.
I found a bunch of friends from different European countries I haven't seen for a while, and we had a lovely dinner. And I'm a little bit croaky this morning, but that's because we had a great day of action yesterday. And we've got everything sorted here. We've got our day 2 cup. I like the certainty of our top cut nowadays. There's none of that. I have come 33rd in a top 32 cut. And I've come 34th in a top 32 cut. And it is a bad feeling. We have 19 match points. If you get 19 or more match points, 3 for a win, 1 for a tie, you are in day 2. If you get fewer than 19 match points, you are not in day 2. And this is good. I love the certainty of it. But as we mentioned yesterday, that means day 2, it's not an equal tournament. We saw our number 1 player, Dominic, the Regigigas player, they cut with an 8-0-1 record. They have 24 match points, whereas a lot of players cut at 6-2-1. 19 match points. That basically means that Dominic is going into this game with almost 2 wins more than the other players. So Dominic is already a favourite to day 2 before we played, for top 8, before we played any of the 5 day 2 rounds.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it quite a lot yesterday, that you can make your day 2 a lot easier by doing better in day 1. Past you can do future you a favour and obviously play a few more rounds. And Dominic, obviously, we were lucky enough to have him on stream earlier in the round, and he took a good match there and then continued on in that and got a couple more wins to get to 8-0-1.
Well, I feel really bad because when we had him on stream, he tied. And when we didn't have him on stream, he won. He had 8 rounds not on stream, won them all. We pulled him on stream and he tied. And I'm like,
sure he's not bothered with 8-0-1. I'm sure. I'd like to think so anyway. I'd like to think so.
Oh, absolutely. And what we got today, nice and simply, we got 5 more rounds of Swiss. So Swiss, of course, being where you play somebody with, as far as possible, the same record as you, or at least similar. And after those 5 rounds of Swiss, we have a top 8. And this is where bubbles can come in. It's not an asymmetrical top cut, it is a symmetrical top cut. We have got exactly 8 spots in the top 8. That means that if you have a bunch of players on the same record, then resistance, essentially your opponent's record, that is going to be what determines it. So every match point, absolutely crucial here. There are going to be players like Dominic who can probably win 2 rounds, and they're probably going to be in, honestly. Yeah. Whereas there are a bunch of other players who are going to need to probably post 4 wins in order to actually get into top 8. That is, the players at the bottom of the standings, they are literally looking at 4 wins, and for some players that might not even do it. It is rough.
Yeah, I think it's quite funny, actually, because I was talking to you yesterday about all this, and a very good friend of mine actually made day 2 yesterday for the first time, so I was really happy for them. So we went out to celebrate last night, and they were like, okay, so how's my day 2 looking? What do I need? And I was like, I'm not going to lie to you, at 6-2-1, you're going to have to get 4 wins and maybe a draw as well to guarantee it. And they were like, what? And it's like, I got to go to bed. It's like 9 o'clock. I've got to go to bed now and get enough sleep. And, we keep repeating it, but, you can have a really heavy day 2. And Dominic's setting himself up really nicely as well. And above everyone else, I think the highest wins after that, there was another 8-win player, but everyone else below that is, 7-2. And then there's a lot of 6-2-1s today. So a lot of people on a similar playing field, and then a few people in the upper echelons there. So it's going to be a really interesting day. It
is. And I think you said Tord Reklev cut at 6-2-1, which surprised me. When we saw Tord on stream yesterday, he was on an absolute tear. At 6-0, and I believe there was an intentional draw in there at some point, and it's interesting to see. Tord was one of my favourites coming in, having won the Peoria Regional Championships with that Lost Box deck, and then coming back into this tournament with that same deck and starting off at 6-0. I'm thinking, well, at this stage I'm going to believe someone can beat Tord when they show me, but as it stands, there are an awful lot of very, very good players. And I think there is something to be said about having been here before, knowing what's expected, because 14 rounds of Pokemon is a lot of Pokemon.
Definitely.
Especially kind of like a day and a bit. So I think players that have been here before do have that little bit of an advantage because they're used to going, okay, right, let's start again, 5 more rounds. And I think, and I don't think this sounds rude, for newer players, sometimes getting day 2 is the goal. I've made day 2. I've made my first day 2. I am delighted. That's awesome. For other players, they make day 2 at the majority of tournaments. Tord rarely misses a day 2. Day 2 is not the goal. So different players are coming into this tournament with different goals. Some players have got Day 2 and they're like, this is an important step. I've made my first Day 2. I'd love to see where I can go from here. And other players are like, right, well, that's Day 2 out of the way. Now I need to get that top 8 finish.
Of course. I mean, it's really important to note, Rome wasn't built in a day, right?
No.
Tord, once upon a time, had his first top cut, had his first regional win, had his first internats win, 3 of those now in the bag. So, you know, maybe even those don't hit the spot anymore, right? But, you know, you have to have the foundations first. You've got to start getting those Day 2s, getting yourself in the right mental. You know, I think a lot of people, maybe when it's the first, second time, you might be a bit nervous coming into Day 2. You don't really know what to expect. You're playing very good players, big names as well. Sometimes they're an intimidation factor in that sense. So I think the more often you do it and the more confidence you gain in yourself, you're going to have a better time.
Yeah, and I mean, I've been now, you know, I've had a tournament where I had like a really good first day, and then the second day I basically went into the tournament thinking, I made the second day, I'm so happy.
Yeah.
And I just played really badly and did pretty terribly, because for me, getting into that second day, that was, at that point, that was a goal. This was a decade ago now, and I was delighted about that. And I didn't really go into Day 2 with the right mindset, so it's really interesting to see all those different players and the different goals and where they're going. And the great thing is, you know, we had a player on stream yesterday, and I interviewed them, and it was so wonderful. They told me, oh, you know, this is a tournament where my team and I are going to announce ourselves.
Yeah, that's
and
great.
they did a great job. But what I really look forward to, like, I'm not going anywhere. I intend to be doing this for a long time yet. So I look forward to seeing these players who we've not really heard of before in a year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, seeing these players become the top players in the game. And you've got to have that first important finish before you become that real top player. I mean, I told a story of when I played Tord in like 2014, I think,
the
yesterday.
Silver Bangle. Oh.
But back in 2014, Tord was not the big household name he is now. This was when Tord was really kind of coming up and announcing themselves. But now, like, you can't really play competitive Pokemon without going, Tord, oh yeah, Tord's kind of amazing. So moving on to the metagame then, Benji, what did we see yesterday?
Well, we saw a good mixture. We saw lots of Giratina in lots of different forms, both Lost Box Giratina, Arceus Giratina. Not really the results we expected from it throughout the day, but one thing we definitely did see is lots of Palkia, lots of Arceus, and then some Regigigas, of course, that we were saying before. Regigigas 801, our leading seed at the minute in the tournament. And yeah, I think we saw pretty much everything we were expecting to see. Anything that you saw that you were a bit shocked about seeing on stream yesterday?
Honestly, not really. There is a player who I believe did make Day 2, Gawain Wagner. I'll have to double check they definitely made it. They were playing an Arceus metal deck. And that was very, very interesting to me. That is something I was not expecting. So that was a little bit weird. But honestly, I was talking to Freya about this, and when I was looking around, especially the top tables yesterday, it was the meta we were expecting. A lot of Arceus, a lot of Palkia, a lot of Giratina, a lot of Mew, few Regigigas, exactly the kind of things we're looking at. Now, we do have Nico, Alabas, and Vinnie Schelfhaut. As always, apologies for any pronunciation there. Nothing terrible in the prizes. One Chorus's Experiment, one Giratina V-Star, one Sableye. Does Vinnie play? Oh, Vinnie does play a 1-1 Bibarel line, so actually that is rubbish. I don't want a 1-1. I don't want my only Bibarel in the prizes.
Only one of my 1-1. And, you know, we just talked about the metagame. We said yesterday lots of Giratina in Lost Box and Arceus form. And, of course, we saw Arceus yesterday as well. And here we are again, both these decks right at the top and these 7-1-1 players we were talking about. Ross, how do you think this game's going to run down? Do you think Giratina's going to have a good time here?
I honestly don't know at this stage. We've got so many good decks with so many variable matchups. Everything is just kind of, it's all running into each other. I mean, I feel pretty confident that we're going to see a win for Giratina here, but we've been talking quite a lot about that question of what is the best way to play Giratina? Is it with that Lost Box or is it with Arceus? This is at least a good way to look. So we do see a Chorus's Experiment from Nico. Starts with a Comfy that is absolutely the Pokemon you want. We get 2 cards in the Lost Zone right away from a Chorus's Experiment. And worth pointing out, on Vinnie's turn, all we really saw was a bench and an attachment. Not a terrible turn 1, but not necessarily the turn 1 you were looking for.
And I think, is that the Espeon V sitting on his bench there? I can't really see the
No, I believe it is the Espeon V, which is not really what you're looking for. Now, Nico does play one copy of Sableye, although we know that one Sableye is in the prizes, but that's not really what you want in this matchup. This is going to be a Giratina fight.
Yeah, I imagine that the Espeon coming down there just for a little bit of protection, just in case that Arceus somehow goes down quite early. Vinnie just making sure he's got something to attach to soon. And Nico here going through his flower selection, setting up his bench, 2 Giratina down very similarly. He's got 2 attackers now to be able to utilize throughout the game. 4 in the lost zone already, and that spit innocently now for free. No energy cost. What an ability on that Cramorant.
I love it. You get 4 cards in the lost zone. You don't have to pay for the attack. 110 damage for nothing is crazy good. And now, that Arceus, basically Pokemon V have 220. So when Cramorant hits a Pokemon V, you've got 1 turn to basically evolve it, or you are going to lose it. I do need to just, not correct myself, but add on to what I said a minute ago. That Sableye for Nico, there is a possibility of using Galarian Zigzagoon with a scoop up net and then Sableye's attack to potentially KO 2 Comfy in one go, which would be a nice big swing, but these Giratina decks are not set up for that really aggressive Sableye play in the same way as, say, a Lost Box deck would be.
Of course, I think Lost Box really utilises that Sableye, and the Giratina just using it as a nice little tech card there, obviously, when it gets up to 10. Looking over at Vinnie here, though, an Ultra Ball, finally being able to access his deck and go in. Probably here looking for an Arceus V-Star. I imagine that Starbirth is going to allow him to move forward a little bit in this game, grab some more cards that he needs. And he's going to need something to attach his energy to. We said before, Espeon VMAX, not really the card you want to be utilising in this matchup as an attacker, so he's definitely going to want something different to attach his energy to.
Yeah, I agree. You want to get a Giratina down, although if Nico does get that Sableye out and start using it, Espeon will become a lot better. Now, we do see the V-Star power coming out here, and you've got to have the Starbirth. It's got to happen, because you've just said you've got to get an attacker. One thing I actually kind of like here, if Vinnie then gets a KO on this Cramorant, Nico kind of has to respond with a Giratina. And Giratina's getting a one-hit KO on Arceus, regardless of which of the 2 attacks you use. So there is a decent chance that Cramorant damage, as fun as it was, might end up being completely irrelevant. And if that is the case, then Vinnie taking the first prize, starting to build up a Giratina on the bench. This is turning into a decent turn for Vinnie. I just really don't like it when your Starbirth, your V-Star power, is used to grab your attacking Pokemon.
Yeah, I know. You sort of want to be able to pull out all the stars and the banners, don't you? With your Starbirth, you want to grab these tech cards, maybe something to disrupt your opponent. But obviously, Vinnie had a bit of a slower start here. He's going to have to utilize some of those building blocks to get his board there. Touching back on what you said about the Cramorant, obviously, Lost Box, again, we talked about a deck that can really utilize those early Cramorant attacks, trying to take those 1 prize knockouts. And I do agree with you that 110 damage now, maybe later on in the game if this Arceus doesn't come down, becoming relevant. But for the minute, that Giratina is going to have to respond.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I like this. Now, here we do come a Galarian Zigzagoon, going and dropping a damage counter.
And a boss on that Giratina as well. This Arceus is going to be able to swing and knock that out. Vinnie in a huge swing of turns. We were just talking that it looked a bit slow. Obviously, his board's still not looking the best, having attached these to the Espeon. However, he goes 2 prizes up in this game.
I love that. I love getting the KO on the Giratina. I love the 2 prizes. I said the 110 from Cramorant isn't terribly relevant. So Cramorant is not something you really want to go for. If anything, by not KOing the Cramorant, you're leaving a Pokemon that's not that useful on Nico's side of the board. And, just that 10 damage in Galarian Zigzagoon. Because the math gets really awkward because you're minusing 20 because of a double turbo energy, but then you're adding 30 because of the choice bout. You end up 10 short, drop that Galarian Zigzagoon. I love that play from Vinnie there. And that is one of the things that we love about Starbirth. You can just go and grab that boss's orders in Galarian Zigzagoon, and it's nice and easy. Is Vinnie going to end up paying for not grabbing a Giratina? Honestly, maybe.
Maybe, as we continue to say that Espeon maybe not the best attacker. However, it does do damage for energy on your opponent's side of the board as well as yourself. So it's going to be able to do a bit of damage there if he is forced. It's all of your opponent's Pokemon, not just yourself. They're active in yours. All of your opponent's Pokemon. So obviously, these Giratinas needing 3 energy to attack. So hopefully Espeon's able to do a few things if he is forced to attack with it. But that Colress coming to Nico's hand. Still looking through his hand. Not a lot going on here. He's got a lot of energy there. And the Thornton we see, which is a really cool tech card in this deck, allowing those basic Pokemon to switch with some in the discard, causing some pretty spicy situations.
I love Thornton so much here. It's just a weird card that I wish saw more played than it did. As soon as I saw the card, I was like, there are so many fun situations you can use. It doesn't see as much use as I was expecting, but being able to switch a basic Pokemon in play with a basic Pokemon in your discard pile. It's weird. It's hard to surprise your opponent too much with Fortum because you have to have the card in your discard pile in order to switch into it, but you can still pull off some really fun plays.
Some really fun plays indeed. Now, Nico, going for that Greninja, he knows here that he needs to see some more cards this turn. As I said, he's got a lot of energy in his hand. The great activator of Greninja, he's going to use one of those energies now, I'm sure, to use that conceal card and get himself 2 more cards off the top of his deck.
I think that's a good play, and I'm looking at Espeon VMAX, I'm going to be honest with you here, Benji, right? 3 energy, 60 damage for each energy on your opponent's side of the board that is attached to all of their Pokemon. Well, how many times yesterday did we see Giratina players play double Mirage Gate, so they had kind of 2 Giratina set up? We saw plenty of Giratina board states with 5 energy on the field. Well, 5 energy on the field is 300. That's a one-hit KO. So, actually, you know, I could get on board with this. 4 energy is 240, with a Choice Bout and a Galarian Zigzagoon is 280. That is a one-hit KO on a Giratina V-Star. So I don't think Espeon VMAX is your favorite attacker. Let's be 100% clear about that. But could it end up being pretty good? Yeah. And if nothing else, it kind of, because Nico knows what Espeon does, it kind of says to Nico, go on, attach all your energy. And if the worst case scenario is Nico goes, ha, joke's on you, I'm not going to attach energy that I want to attach, that's not that bad a thing.
No, of course, you're sort of trying to keep your opponent in a box, aren't you? Stopping them. Obviously, we see the Mirage Gate come down there, and Nico's gone straight against that, and he's gone, you know what, forget it, I'm going to attach them anyway. I want these energy on the board. I want to make sure that I'm able to attack 2 times with this Giratina, potentially being able to discard those energy off my side of the board. Those energies coming down really quick. So Espeon is becoming very activated right now. One going to that Comfey. We were talking about this yesterday. Sometimes Mirage Gate used to get the energy on the active just to get a retreat out of that.
I love it. It's just Mirage Gate is one of those cards. There are certain cards, you know, I follow all the new cards as they're coming out because I'm obsessed with this kind of stuff. And there are some cards you look at and you're like, oh, they could be kind of fun. And there are some cards you look at and you're like, oh, no. And that's Mirage Gate. Mirage Gate is like 7 cards in a lost set. Search for 2 basic energy and attach them. It is one of those cards that on first glance is just amazing. Now, we do see a nice play from Nico here, lost zoning 2 of those energy. So actually has ended a turn with, I think, a perfect amount of energy in play. There's only 2 there, so the punish from Espeon isn't huge, but you're still 1 energy away from being able to...
And Vinnie scoops it up. Nothing else available to get that Espeon active. Nothing else to start off swinging. He can't punish that Giratina, and he knows that it's too easy for Nico to get another attack on next turn for 280 damage. Vinnie saw the curtains close in, and he scooped early. Yeah,
I mean, you know, to finish my point, Nico had the 2 energy, so either an energy... boom, 280, or 1 more card in the lost zone because Nico had 9, and you've got your Star Requiem instant KO. And I loved Vinnie's start there when you get the you get the boss's orders going down and KOing that Giratina. That was really good, but Vinnie never established a board. Vinnie took 2 prizes, but never established any board presence. You know, you had an Espeon V with a single energy attached, and your 1 Arceus, and when Arceus goes down. No, unfortunately. And actually, yeah, for those who can't see, Benji is reminding me at this stage, yeah, actually, Espeon VMAX would prevent Star Requiem, but Vinnie hadn't been able to find the Espeon VMAX.
Not yet. Not yet, definitely. But just a pointer there. That is why it's in the deck, right? Sableye, but of course that Star Requiem, we talked about it. Yeah. Parasol stopping that, and of course the Espeon VMAX coming into decks. It's a big 3 prizer. You don't want your Arceuses to go down too easy either. You know, sometimes big charmed in these decks as well. So the Espeon sort of providing a little bit of pseudo protection there as well.
It is. It's becoming an interesting 1-1 tech. We're seeing it more and more, that Espeon. So it's one of those cards I didn't see a lot of love when it came out in Fusion Strike or Evolving Skies, but it came out in both. But it's still kind of, it's kind of come back because of things like Sableye and Star Requiem. So, yeah, it's an excellent point there. So we do see Vinnie starting off. We do have ourselves an Arceus in the active, which is honestly kind of perfect. And if we started with a Capture Energy there, because
yes,
we like Capture Energy.
We do like Capture Energy. I think that we talk so much about how much Arceus wants an attachment turn 1. Obviously, a double turbo, always great to get down, but Capture Energy allowing you to get another basic Pokemon into your deck straight down, and then you just need a DCE the following turn with Arceus. One of the better energy attachments he can have.
And there's a fun little thing going on here where both players have prized their Radiant Pokemon. Nico has prized a Radiant Greninja. Vinnie has gone and prized the Radiant Gardevoir. So you're only allowed to play 1 Radiant Pokemon of any description description in your deck, well, some of them are incredibly powerful, some of them a bit less so, but we do see the same 3 or 4 popping up, let's be honest. But they are very good Pokemon, but you are limited to 1 Radiant Pokemon of any description in your deck. So seeing it in the prizes, not ideal, but I kind of like how fair it is that they've both prized it. Oh, and here we see with Vinnie going, you know what? I really feel like I want a Giratina this game.
Really want a Giratina, and again, we see Vinnie getting the Espeon out. Maybe perhaps he's actually trying to utilize Espeon in this game. Obviously, last time it did just come down from his hand, but he's actually chosen to go and get it this time. So maybe wanting to utilize that Solar Revelation and stopping the Star Requiem from being able to take down any of his Pokemon. Or, as well as that, seeing that if Nico, as we discussed, attaches too many energy, you can punish that with a big attacker.
I do like that. Espeon's ability prevents all effective attacks from your opponent's Pokemon done to your Pokemon that have energy attached. Makes it harder to protect those comfy because they rarely will have energy on. But it's really just good for stopping things like that Star Requiem. And damage is not an effect of an attack, but getting rid of energy, special conditions, instant KO, damage counters, all of these things will be stopped by Espeon. So we do have Comfy here, and it does seem like we've got a... Is that a Lost Vacuum coming down straight away?
I think
no,
it's
a quick ball getting rid of a Lost Vacuum. There we go. We do have a Roxanne in the Lost Zone because of Comfy.
It's important to note he only plays 1 of those as well.
Yep.
So it means that the potential to use that perhaps late game to seal up sort of any sort of disruption is now gone. He's no longer able to access that. For those who don't know or are watching for the first time today, the Lost Zone, a new mechanic brought back from the past, however, new to our Sword and Shield era, should I say. And once cards enter the Lost Zone, it is impossible currently to get them back out.
Yeah, but we got a bunch of cards that rely on them. So you've got things like Sableye that can drop 12 damage counters for 1 energy if you got 10 cards in the Lost Zone. Mirage Gate, that item card we talked about, accelerating energy, if you have 7 cards in the Lost Zone. Now, Nico's gone and done what these players like to do. We've seen a Luminion hit the bench, gone straight for that Chorus's Experiment. You look at 5 cards, 3 of them go into your hand, 2 of them go into the Lost Zone. So you've got that combination of both draw and Lost Zoning, but we see the Battle VIP pass getting hit. That is wonderful.
Do you think he might be happy about seeing that off the chorus? I can't think of many better cards he would have liked to see then. But yeah, I think Battle VIP pass, one of the best cards. As usual, you can see turn 1, being able to get 2 basic Pokemon, put them straight on your bench, pretty much for free. No discards involved with that. Only turn 1 though.
Yeah, it's so good. We talked about this yesterday. Just one of those things where it was a card when everyone went, well, the downside's too big. And then we all tested a bit and we were like, yeah, that downside is not too big. This card is fully broken. And there isn't an element here, getting rid of that Roxanne for Nico. I'm thinking, I'm 1 game up. I like my deck. It's a best of 3. I can choose to be a little more aggressive here than maybe I would otherwise be because I've got that cushion of having won game 1. Plus, we know that Arceus Giratina is a deck that if it has a good start is a very good deck. But if it doesn't have a good start, the recovery potential, I mean, right round 1 with Philip Onback, who was on stream, Philip told us straight away, like, yeah, this deck does not come back. This deck has good starts, and that is what we're aiming for. So if Nico can kind of jump ahead a little bit in this game, we saw in the last game, Vinnie went down a little bit and went, yeah. Because Vinnie's not playing Mirage Gate. There's no big explosive turns halfway through. Nico can have those big explosive turns. Vinnie is going for consistency and setup with that Arceus. They are very, even though they're generally Giratina decks, they are very different builds. And if I'm Nico and I've won game 1, I am fine being aggressive. But stop me if you've heard this one before. Turn 1, 4 cards in the Lost Zone. Cramorant for 110.
Yeah, we were just talking about explosive turns, and I think that's almost as good as it gets, Nico. They're 4 in the Lost Zone already on his first turn. We know that those Chorus are going to add another 2, so Mirage Gate very, very possible on his following turn. And again, that Spit innocently for free. 110 on that Arceus again. It's looking pretty similar to the last game. And a Marnie coming out from Vinnie here, maybe trying to slow down Nico, but also really hoping to get some more cards. And energy for that Arceus V-Star, so he doesn't have to Starbirth for it this time would be nice. It doesn't look like he gets that, and he flips his V-Star counter straight into deck, any 2 cards he wants.
It's really good. I'm just looking at the board here, and I know Vinnie obviously didn't have the combination of cards, but I wanted Vinnie to do what Vinnie did last game. Last game, Vinnie used the boss's orders, grabbed up the Giratina, went and got a KO. Unable to do that this game. and Nico only has one Giratina on the field. That would have been absolutely huge. If anybody's wondering, there is zero chance that was going to happen, because you may notice Vinnie's only Galarian Zigzagoon is in his prizes. I think Vinnie would have loved to repeat that play. It would have been so much better this game than it was last game.
However, we see the lovely Hisuian Heavy Ball making your dreams come to life, potentially. Maybe the Zigzagoon, but maybe also the Gardevoir. He knows that the Gardevoir can sort of put the Giratina out of range.
There we go.
280 is perfect maths into an Arceus. We can see in Vinnie's list no big charm or anything like that to sort of bump that HP up to 310. So the Guardi is only protected here, taking that Arceus to 300 HP, 20 away from the big Giratina. Lost impact attack.
Yeah, I love that. If you've got a Pokemon that is exactly KOing you, as Giratina is for pretty much all the good V-Stars at the moment, having something that reduces damage by 20 is sneaky, absolutely huge, because it just means that your opponent is whiffing key KOs. It forces them to either have a choice belt or to use Sableye to drop damage counters, and that could be where Espeon comes in here, but now this Cramorant damage becomes very important, because Cramorant will mean that Giratina will get the KO here, whereas an undamaged Arceus would be saved by the Gardevoir.
Yeah.
So we do see Nico here just having a little bit of a look at the card, familiarising himself with Espeon VMAX. And this isn't because Nico doesn't know the card, it's because it's a card you don't see very much. You're in day 2 and you're going, let's just double check I'm remembering it right.
Yeah, I think that obviously Espeon, we discussed a new tech sort of being included in these decks, something that's only started popping up in the last tournament or two, and Nico just double checking there. What can I get away with this on the board? What can't I? Of course, Nico's going to now be aware that only things with energy attached are going to be protected from that, but I think that everything relevant on Vinnie's side of the board has energy now. Arceus obviously being able to do that quite easily.
Yeah, unfortunately so. So here we go with a Battle VIP pass going into the Lost Zone. It's phenomenal turn 1. After turn 1, you love seeing it off the comfy because it is just easy Lost Zone fodder. Here we've got Snorlax and Chorus's Experiment. You imagine it's going to be the Chorus's Experiment unless he's already got one in hand. Yeah, there's no supporter in hand there. And Snorlax is fine, is a decent and nice attacker, and I know it's one that players like to keep for later in the game, but you're trying to build up your Lost Zone to 10, really. That is the key number. To being able to use Chorus's Experiment, getting another 2 cards in the Lost Zone, plus you don't have a supporter anyway, yeah. I would have gone for the Chorus's Experiment. There is an argument for Snorlax, but that's what I would have done.
Yeah, I think the argument there was just pretty simple in the fact of Nico, whether he wants to utilise sort of being aggressive now, as you say, trying to get up to that 7, trying to get up to that 10 in the Lost Zone as quickly as possible, using Chorus and drawing, I think is the safer play going through that. Or does he want to go for the Snorlax? He's got an attacker to try and take the KO on that Arceus, maybe further down the line or anything like that. But he's going to go for the safer play here. Just Chorus, get those things in the Lost Zone. Now up to 8, meaning Mirage Gate is online. All he needs now is a Giratina V-Star, Mirage Gate, attach, switch. I think he can get it.
That's all he needs.
All he
just
needs.
that.
I think he can get it.
If he gets these 24 cards, he has got this.
I think that these decks, these Lost Zone, these Chorus, it's sort of not exactly cherry picks like those Enteleon decks we've seen so far, but it gives you a lot of freedom over what cards you are putting in your hand and what you're getting rid of. And of course, we see the Mirage Gate come down already. One part of the combo, I'm just hope I'm proved right here.
Oh, no. I mean, as much as I mock, you're absolutely right. It sounds like a lot. You need your Mirage Gate. You need your other energy. You need your V-Star. You need your Switch. But the thing is, this deck is built around the Comfy engine. And that means 2 things. Firstly, you're constantly flower selecting with Comfy, getting extra cards a lot faster than a lot of decks do. It also means your deck is built for switching. Oh, we're just one switch away. We see a Comfy hit the field. There's an air balloon. And the whole combo. Yeah, and that is... I think that's a really nice example for players at home, especially players that are unfamiliar with these kind of decks. It was a multi-card combo, and it was pretty casual in the end for Nico, and crucially now has 10 cards in the Lost Zone.
Pretty cash indeed. Now, one really interesting thing to note, Ross, is that Nico, yes, taking a knockout in the Arceus, so he's going to be really happy with that, but not able to get down another Giratina that turn. So no secondary attacker, and we know that on Vinnie's side of the board, he is able to also one-shot Nico's Giratina, a Clash of Titans here, really swing for swing. So if Vinnie is able to knock out this Giratina, Nico's going to find himself scrambling to try and find his next answer for that.
Yeah, I've said about these explosive turns, but you cannot have an explosive turn of an evolution Pokemon if you don't have the basic down. I feel like I'm back in 2012 with Mewtwo EX, just same big Pokemon KOing itself back and forth. This time it's Giratina V-Star. And yeah, I mean, you've absolutely nailed the point on that one, Benji, because we don't have a backup Giratina on Nico's side of the board. Sableye is on board now, dropping 12 damage counters, but
only to Gardevoir.
Only to Gardevoir.
Those energy coming down in really key places. Vinnie placing them very well. He's only put the one on the Espeon for now, knowing that it's just protected itself a little bit. That Giratina definitely going to have some on it at the end of this turn. Even if attacking, only needed to discard 2 energy, so 1 should be left. So it's going to be a situation for Nico where maybe even that Snorlax now, that he could just drop and attach his energy to, is now in the loss zone. He doesn't have that option to him anymore. It's going to be really interesting to see what he comes up with to be able to attack next turn.
I mean, Cramorant. He's basically only got Cramorant. This would have been this would have been a great turn for Snorlax. This would be Snorlax's time to shine. Snorlax ain't home right now. So we do see Giratina's going to be coming in here, getting the KO on Giratina. And this is good for Vinnie. Do bear in mind, an important side note here, Vinnie doesn't play Mirage Gate, so you're not going to get those big explosive turns. And Vinnie's got 2 cards in the loss zone, not 7. Sorry, not 10. So Star Requiem's not going to be there. I'm not sure Vinnie can really stream Giratina KOs right now. Doesn't have the energy.
No, definitely. I think both players have sort of come to a roadblock here. Nico trying to find the answer to that, try and find an attacker to get through. I'm sure he will come up with something. That Ordinary Rod is a good start, getting that Giratina V back in the deck at the very least. He knows that Vinnie may have a turn here out. He's not going to turn up to work on time. That Giratina not going to be able to attack next turn, needing another Psychic Energy and a Colorless Energy, not possible with a DTE. That Espeon, it is possible for a DTE to be attached to it for it to attack, but not doing very much damage. No energy on Nico's side of the board at the minute.
No, if Nico attaches 1 energy, Espeon will be doing a whopping 40 damage because of that double turbo energy. It's a good card. It's 2 colorless energy. It's wonderful, but it reduces damage that you do by 20. There's a lot of the big cards in the Pokemon TCG have a downside along those lines. We've seen it with Mirage Gate. We've seen it with double turbo energy. It's basically making you make those decisions. Speaking of decisions, we've got a Chorus's Experiment coming down here, and we are losing a Scoop up net and an energy, but we're getting a Giratina, a Galarian Zigzagoon, and a Mirage Gate. So, actually, you know what? Probably all right.
I think Nico's going to be really pleased for seeing that Giratina, obviously. I don't know if that, you know, the odds were quite high, the second one being shuffled back into the deck again. But one of the really important things to note here is he's pretty confident now that this turn, Vinnie's not going to be able to gust up that Giratina and take a knockout now. So he's got time, he can Mirage Gate, he's got a turn to attach and perhaps evolve into that V-Star. So we're going to come to a point where Nico is taking his chances, hoping that Vinnie doesn't have any of the answers on his board, anything he can drop in one turn to be able to take a knockout on that V, and he's just going to hope to bide his time and get back in on the following turn. That Mirage Gate drops 1 Water, 1 Psychic, shuffling up the deck now, 1 Chorus already used. Will we see another one? There are 13 cards in the loss zone now, more than he's ever going to need.
And he's building a protective wall with his Lost Zone card. It's going like 2/3 of the way across the table. Like, you can't get my comfy. It's hiding behind the Lost Zone.
I like this. The 160 Shred from the Giratina here. Shred, for those who don't know, an attack as old as time.
Yeah.
Different damages on it, but goes through all effects on your opponent's Pokemon. Used in the past to get through annoying cards such as Hooper and Miltank currently and things like that. Being able to get through those things that stop V Pokemon attacking. And of course now just doing the 160 damage, putting Vinnie's side of the board really under pressure. That Giratina not going to be able to survive another hit.
No, unfortunately not. That Shred was really, really good, really timely. You don't really want to do that, though. You don't want to Shred for 160 and then leave your Giratina in the firing line to take a hit. Ideally, Giratina comes in for the big KOs. If you're poking away with little bits of damage, that's supposed to be things like Cramorant, things like Sableye. If you can drop 12 damage counters with Sableye, Shred will then still get a KO. But we know that the Sableye damage isn't unfortunately relevant here because of the Espeon. And that's actually become sneaky big because that Espeon is stopping Nico getting a nice casual KO with Sableye next turn. And we know that Vinnie's not really getting an attack off with this Giratina, not a relevant one this turn. So it may well end up going to the bench. Being able to drop 12 damage counters, getting a KO on the bench would be amazing. Espeon is putting in a shift.
Yeah, I think Espeon definitely doing its job. It's got one big role in this deck, and it's definitely fulfilling that. This Giratina, see Nico's plan working out here. Obviously, as he said, not ideal to have to leave it up there in the active. However, he's hoping that Vinnie can't get those answers. It doesn't look like he can at the minute. A bit of a roadblock in his hand. No other attackers, no other options. He's eyeing up the Marnie. Can I sort of disrupt this a little bit? Attaching the DTE anywhere. Eyeing up all his options. Yeah, as I said, the DTE before is the Espeon. He's going to be doing a bit of damage. Not a lot with that -20 as well. Vinnie, not really a lot of answers here.
No, you're doing kind of 160 as it stands at the moment. 3 times 60 minus 20. 160 it's fine. You're setting up for a nice 2-hit KO. One thing this will actually do that I like, and it really depends on whether it's actually going to last long enough on Vinnie's turn, this will set up so that then Arceus can come and finish off and take the KO while accelerating energy to the Giratina. Now, there's all kind of gusting that could ruin this from Nico's side, but in theory here, you could get an attack with Espeon, KO of Arceus while accelerating energy to Giratina, and then bringing Giratina to really finish out the game. I don't know if Nico's going to let Vinnie do this, but that is absolutely one option here, and it's an option I like quite a bit.
Yeah, Vinnie here attaching the choice belt to that Espeon, taking that up to a whole 190 damage. It's not going to be enough for a knockout here, but the one thing that we can say for absolutely certain is Nico currently, in his list, well I say currently, for the whole tournament and the rest of it, does not play any choice band. So he is not going to be able to take a knockout on this Espeon VMAX no matter what he does this turn. That Espeon's protected by its ability, so there's not going to be no Star Requiem this turn, and of course that 280 from the Lost Impact, not going to be enough either. So both players sort of going for the same play here, hoping to attack him with their best attacker possible, and really pray that their opponent can't get the return knockout.
It's an interesting thing we've got going on with VMAXs in the format at the moment, which is they give up free prizes, which is more than V-Stars. When V-Stars came in to replace them, kind of. VMAX is still trickling in, but largely replaced by V-Stars. I've caught some flack for that in the past. They're weird because they give up free prizes, but the format is kind of built around that key number of 280 at the moment.
Yes.
You know, Charizard, Radiant Charizard with a choice belt, 280. Giratina, 280. And basically, unless you're playing something big with choice belt and Radiant Hawlucha, things like Espeon VMAX, Kyurem VMAX, that we also see, they're basically out of range of the vast majority of decks. So I like this with Vinnie here. The damage isn't hideously relevant. It's what I like to call a generic 2-hit KO. You can do it with almost anything, but it's the HP of Espeon that I'm loving for Vinnie here. But as we suggested, Nico is not just going to let Vinnie do that. We see an escape rope coming down. But, and this is crucial, Nico needs 4 prizes. Vinnie is not going to bench another single prizer.
No, I don't imagine he is. And obviously that escape rope now trying to come up with some sort of game plan here. He's looking at his hand. A Mirage Gate and a Quick Ball available on the Comfey. Nico knows now. He's at a sort of critical mass with this deck. The Giratina, the only real available thing here to do any sort of damage this turn and beyond. He knows that if he has to attack with the Giratina, it's definitely going to go down to that Espeon or anything else realistically that turn. Only 30 damage left on it. But the important thing to mention again, Ross, is that key turn, that Colress, that Snorlax. He would love to have that Snorlax right now as an available attacker. That Sableye is not able to do the work due to Espeon. So he's sort of in a box here.
He is, and I keep going back to the fact that Sableye could just drop damage and get a KO on the bench on that 2-prize Pokemon. It would be so good. The numbers would work so perfectly. I mean, that Espeon is working nicely. And the one thing that's super annoying for Nico here is that even after he gets a KO on this Gardevoir, he's still got to either KO the Espeon for 3 prizes or KO the Giratina and something else. And you kind of can't one-hit KO the Espeon. So, yeah, that escape rope, sure, it means he's not 2-hit KOing the Espeon, but Nico's prize map here is super awkward.
Super awkward, especially with what he has left on board. The only thing I can see now, I'm just looking now, there is 2 water in the Lost Zone so far. I'm just going to look at Nico's list to see how many of those he plays. There is a potential here for, so only 3 waters. So it does mean Nico at the minute hasn't got enough water energy. I can see that lovely Greninja in the prizes. That would have been an option for him to be able to snipe that Giratina on the bench with some damage and take the game away, get 2 more prizes, but that's not even available to him. Obviously, using that last attack that he had from the Giratina here, that Espeon is definitely going to be able to take our knockout, and another energy attachment coming down on Vinnie's side of the board to the Giratina V-Star, and a Raihan. Wow, we talked about this card yesterday, a great addition to the format in my opinion. I think one card that really allowed people to access lots of different things. Is there any energy in the discard for it though? There's not. Vinnie disappointed with that. You can't actually use the Raihan unless he attaches the energy, so judges caught that.
Oh,
So
that's quite good, because that's awkward when you play that card like, no, I can't actually do it. But as you said yourself, it's not a case of, oh no, never mind, you played it, now you lose. You can't play the right hand. So it wasn't a, oh, you can take it back. You're probably not letting players take back misplays on day 2 of a large regional like this. You're literally not allowed to play the card.
I think one of the funniest things about the Pokemon TCG is commas are one of the most powerful things on cards. You have to fulfill before the comma and then after it, and if you can't do the first half, you're not able to play the card. So those commas are really important in this game, not allowing players to do things.
Yeah, absolutely. It's weird. Language is important. Words have meaning. Punctuation is crucial. Hey, look, we're being educational today as well.
Educational, as always.
Go
so,
us.
Ross, a big knockout there from the Espeon, taking Nico's only real threat now off the board. I said that Greninja could have been an option if not so many of those water energy had already hit the lost zone. But that Greninja definitely not going to be able to attack here. I just don't know where Nico goes from here. I don't think he has anything else available for him to be able to take any more knockouts in this game. Another Giratina would be quite difficult to set up at this point. Also, not being able to take a one-shot on the Espeon. The Giratina definitely being able to knock that out. I think it's a bit of a checkmate on Vinnie's side of the board.
I mean, Vinnie needs a Psychic Energy to wrap this game up. The Espeon, Nico can actually sit there with no energy on board, and the Espeon is completely ineffectual, but it's got enough energy to retreat. And the Giratina's got 2 grass energy, and it's going to do 280, and Vinnie's got 1 prize remaining. So it's really, really very simple. If Vinnie has a basic Psychic Energy, just retreat the Espeon, attach it to the Giratina, KO. It doesn't matter what Nico puts in the active, it's going to be KO'd by that Giratina. So I honestly, at this point, if I'm Nico, I've won game 1, I've lost game 2, I'm conceding to save time for game 3. Yes, these players are on 7-1-1 records, that's good. That is 3 more points than a lot of the players have, but that's not that much of a cushion. It's not 5 or 6 points, it's 3. It's good. It basically equates to an extra win, but you don't have that much of a cushion, not with all these players in day 2. I think Nico, in an untimed game, yeah, no, keep going, you're good. I think in a game like this, you've got 16 minutes remaining. I don't see a realistic high chance of Nico winning this game, and you need to be saving time, because tying in day 2, that's what gets you knocked out of top 8.
Yeah, definitely. And I think as well, we've just had a little bit more information from Vinnie's hand. He has got the Psychic Energy in hand as well. So that is definitely going to be an option for him. If this Giratina comes into the active attacks, the Giratina will knock it out. If the Comfey stays there, the Giratina will knock it out. It's the same ending to the same book here from the looks of things on Vinnie. Nico might have a trick up his sleeve. I'm not really sure what it could be now. The Cramorant not doing enough damage to the Giratina. Only 100 damage counters on it at the minute. So I just don't see an answer this side of the board.
No, unfortunately, I really don't. Yeah, sure, Giratina can do some damage. I mean, I suppose, right, Nico's... But the problem is, when Nico puts energy on, then that puts Espeon doing damage. But I suppose Espeon's not going to get a KO. So I think it really comes down to, can Vinnie get a basic Psychic Energy? And he's got at least this turn and the next turn to try and pull it off. I suppose there is a way that Vinnie completely... Yeah, there we go.
And it comes down. The Espeon retreating into the Giratina and a knockout. Nico's plan of trying to build a wall there to try and get Vinnie to forget that he was on the other side of the field did not work. That Giratina, unfortunately, going down, and Vinnie takes game 2. And this is the great part, Ross. We've been so lucky with games this weekend. Almost all of them going to a game 3 situation. 2 players at the top, and we're there once again. Yeah,
we have no control over the stream games. Like, we can choose which games to go on stream. Obviously, we don't pick at random. That would be very silly. So we can go, oh, you know, Vinnie against Nico, 7-1-1, day 2. That is a tasty matchup. Let's do this. You know, Giratina, Arceus against Giratina, Lost Zone. I love that. We can't actually control how the games play out, but, you know, with a couple of exceptions, yesterday we had a stellar game. And if anyone hasn't gone and watched that stream back, I would highly recommend it. even among, I've done a lot of streams at this stage, and in terms of just pure quality of play and quality of the games, yesterday was right up there. We had a lot of very good games, and I'm thinking we might just be in a really nice format right now.
Yeah, there's lots of different options, lots of different decks, and there's lots of different variants of the same deck. Obviously, we're looking right now at 2 completely different styles of Giratina. But going back to your original point, are you telling you've been picking your stream games? I've just been spinning a bottle and throwing a dart at a board and picking random people. I apologise for that. But Nico, looking for a similar start as last game. We can see the Comfey start there, the Cramorant in hand, and a VIP pass. I think that's almost as good as you get. He's going to get to pick to go first this time. We'll have to see if he does choose to do that. In his prizes, we see 1 Mirage Gate, the Roxanne in there again. There's going to be no potential for that disruption in the late game on Vinnie's side of the board, and Arceus start. That Bibarel sneaking into the prizes again, that 1-1 line.
How? 2 games out of 3. That's just mean.
And 2 Psychic Energy as well could become relevant there. We know that Giratina has to loss zone the energy every time it attacks, so energy a key point in this game. We'll have to see how that one comes about.
It absolutely will. We do see a turn 1 VIP pass from Nico here, which is very, very important. Again, it's a card that can only be used on your first turn of the game, but you search out any 2 basics, pop them straight on the bench. It's the perfect card to get on turn 1. And pretty much a garbage card to get any other time of the game. Honestly, outside of turn 1, the actual best use, without even being a little bit sarcastic, is discarding it with Quick Ball, discarding it with Ultra Ball, discarding it with Cramomatic, putting it in the loss zone from a Comfey or a Colress's Experiment.
I was going to say, garbage. What you mean to say is the perfect card to see to discard any other time in the game.
Can we compromise on the perfect garbage?
The perfect garbage, exactly. That's a great way. So, of course, seeing the Giratina come down early now, Nico didn't get to see that last game. That Giratina not coming down early enough to put on that pressure. A difficult choice there. One of it, well, not choice.
No, there's no choice to make that the same card.
But a difficult thing to see, should I say, that Giratina V-Star hitting the loss zone this early in the game. And Lumillion and a boss as well. Another difficult flower picking there. That is the one drawback of these Comfeys. You don't get to pick what's on the top of your deck, unfortunately. Sometimes something nasty, sometimes something good.
Yeah, and that is a big part of this Lost Zone deck, and it happens, unfortunately. I was speaking to the lovely Luke Burke yesterday, who was telling me they were not terribly happy because they used a Pokestop and had to discard both their Clara, used Palpad to put them both into their deck, then used Comfey and were presented with both their Clara and were forced to Lost Zone one of them. And they were not happy about this at all. And they were like, it's unbelievable. And I was like, no, you're playing Lost Box. That is perfectly believable. It's just not what you want to see.
Oh, that's incredibly unlucky. And we see Nico's turn come to an end there, obviously on his first turn, not able to play a supporter, so not likely to get more than 3, maybe 4 in the loss zone on his first turn, and of course not able to attack, so that's Spit Innocently not coming out on Nico's first turn. And Vinnie starting off pretty much what he wants to see, the Hisuian Heavy Ball again very early in the game, that Arceus V-Star jumping out of the prizes, Hisuian Heavy Ball going in, you can see it there in the top right. 2 Arceus on board now, better than what it's looked in the last couple of games. We see the Guardi this time, not in the prizes, coming down. A little bit of protection on those Arceus V-Stars once those Giratinas start swinging. A Grass Energy coming down, and perhaps a Marnie here at some point during this turn as well.
Yeah, it's unfortunate not getting that double turbo energy. Going second, getting that turn 1 attack is really what these Arceus decks are absolutely begging for. Being able to just, and you don't do any damage when you're doing it on Arceus V, but you get to accelerate that energy straight onto the Giratina. You're ready to get that turn 2 Arceus V-Star potentially attacking while accelerating energy. And if you can attack twice with Arceus, really spread that energy around your board, gives you a huge advantage. But I think Vinnie here, we saw in the last game that Espeon absolutely made a huge difference. Now I want to say that's a Giratina. Yeah, the Giratina just got him, but I think Vinnie is going to be searching out an Espeon sooner rather than later. Sure, it did actually end up being a nice little attacker, but there were key points in that game where Nico could have taken advantage either of that Star Requiem or of the Sableye, and in both opportunities they were just completely taken off the board by Espeon. And if I'm Vinnie, I know, there we go. Down comes the Espeon.
I want that. To you.
Yeah, I want it on the board.
He took your advice. He goes, you know what? I think Ross knows what he's talking about.
Yeah,
I'm going to listen
point,
to that.
Ross.
I'll get it out. Yeah. I'm going to make sure this Marnie hits this. I'm going to put it down. And now we do see Nico on his second turn able to play those supporter cards. Colress, the key supporter in these Lost Box decks. You won't see a Lost Box decks without it. draw the top 5 cards of your deck, put 2 in the lost zone, 3 in your hand, and I can tell you one card that's definitely going to be going into the lost zone. It's that perfect garbage there. VIP pass.
Yeah, it is. There's an interesting stadium in hand as well. We see the Temple of Sinnoh there, which of course is really, really useful for making those double turbo energies into single energies. Fun little side note, they also remove the 20 damage reduction. They just turn it into a single colorless energy, not a double, but you don't have the damage reduction either. It turns off that as well. But if that was worth it, you wouldn't be playing them. So, yeah, this is very, very good. And we did see that actually go into he did make a decision. It has
well, it was double chorus off the Comfey. The Comfey gone in.
Yeah.
And
we lost a psychic energy off the chorus's experiment, I like the Temple of Sinnoh. I'd like to see that hit the board.
Yeah, the Temple of Sinnoh, really interesting. It's one of those cards that has multiple uses. Really good in the Reggie matchup as well. Obviously, all special energy in that deck. So the Temple of Sinnoh really ruining the disco at that one. So it's got a lot of uses, but as you said, really good against this Arceus deck. That DT so important for a turn 2 of Arceus V-Star, being able to attach 3 energy with its attack. And with that Trinity Nova, and of course that Temple of Sinnoh, going to be able to turn that off. But is Nico going to wait for a more key time to play that down, or will he try and disrupt that this turn, is the question.
Oh, it is a very important question, and the answer is I honestly don't know. I would kind of like to see it this turn because Vinnie is set up. I mean, if Temple of Sinnoh comes down and it can't be bumped, that kind of locks Vinnie into using the Arceus V to accelerate energy. And as we said, you've got to accelerate energy. The deck does not work if you don't do it. Because if Temple of Sinnoh is out there, then all of a sudden you can't Arceus V-Star because there's no way to get enough energy on there to actually do it. So it could be kind of cheeky having it down this turn. I like it, frankly. I like it a lot.
Yeah, I fully agree with you there. I couldn't be in more agreement, really. I think it's a really good time to try and disrupt. We talked about destruction a lot this weekend. Path to the Peak, Marnie, Roxanne. Temple of Sinnoh, another way to try and slow this Arceus deck down. Now we see Nico going through the motions again with these Comfeys. That Cramorant now live. There are 7 in the lost zone. He only needs 4 for that. But he's going to be looking for Mirage Gates. Not able to find them. Just a retreat. And 110 again. We've seen that all 3 games so far. That 110 damage from Spit Innocently on an Arceus V.
And the Temple of Sinnoh
coming down as well. I think we predicted that quite well.
Yeah, I thought he was going to make me a liar then. I was sweating a little bit. But I did check the deck list. There is only 1 copy in there. So there's absolutely an argument to be made for saving it till later in the game, turning off the attack of something like an Espeon. We saw double turbo energy in the late game in Game 2 be really, really effectual. So there was certainly an argument. But we did see it come down and bumped immediately by Collapse Stadium.
Immediately. Nico's not going to be happy with that. As he said, a one-off in his deck. He really wanted to get a lot of utilization out of that, but gone already. And the Collapse Stadium as well. These Lost Box decks like to fill their bench up quite often. Lots of different attackers. The Comfey is coming down. Also room for a Greninja. That's now locked up to 4, and we know that Nico isn't able to play a counter stadium. Does has the Lost Vacuum to be able to get rid of that, which is going to help him towards 10 with Star Requiem as well. But that is now his only option to get rid of that Collapse Stadium.
Yeah, it's not ideal, but it is the way it is. I personally like playing my own stadium and then something like a Pokestop and then immediately using it, then Lost Vacuuming it so my opponent doesn't get to use it. But that's for something like a Pokestop that you're using to help you. It's not a counter stadium like your Temple of Sinnoh where you're slowing down your opponent. Vinnie here, we've got an Arceus, we've got a Giratina, we've got an Espeon, we've got that Gardevoir. It's interesting that Vinnie has played that Collapse Stadium, given that then means that Vinnie can't bench a second Giratina. But we do see here, it looks like we're seeing a double turbo energy coming onto Arceus. So I don't think Vinnie's got access to the V-Star. If he did, then you could have V-Starred the one on the bench, potentially attacked with that, KO in the Cramorant while getting the energy. As it is, this isn't bad for Vinnie, but it's not great. Because also, that 110 from the Cramorant, well, it's relevant, but Gardevoir is kind of ruining it. So you need to use kind of zigzagoon scoop-up net shenanigans, which is going to be difficult with Collapse Stadium in play.
Just to fact it there, just to double-check, Ross, Radiant Gardevoir only for V Pokemon. So that Cramorant is going to be able to do that 110.
Excellent correction. Thank you very much. So you're right. Problem. So that damage from the Cramorant just became hyper-relevant. Yeah, that's good.
However, it's important to mention that's the first time that it's become really relevant in the matchup. The two-shot has come out a lot of the time, but the second attack has usually been done with the Giratina, being able to go through the Arceus anyway. So I think this time Nico's going to be really happy that 110, you know, we've mentioned a couple of times, not really relevant in the first few matches. I mean, you especially in the first match really highlighted where that 110 wouldn't actually result to anything, but now really effective.
And I think this is a lot of the reason why you poke with Cramorant, because game 1 didn't really matter. Game 2 didn't really matter. Game 3, wait, I'm getting 2 prizes from my Cramorant? And in the crucial game 3, that is absolutely huge. It's also quite nice just, you know, when that Radiant Gardevoir is stopping you getting a one-hit KO with Greninja, especially in a world. One of the things you see from these decks is that you can drop a lot of damage counters with Sableye to reduce the need. You know, if someone's using Gardevoir, Sableye covers you. Need a choice bout, Sableye covers you. But Espeon turns that off. But we do see a Cramorant here getting a KO on the Arceus. Nico goes up by 2 prizes. And if you can get a 2-prize lead and you've only attacked a Cramorant, you feel good.
Yeah, I do think, though, the only sad thing on Nico's side of the board is just those 2 Giratina Vs sitting there. Obviously not got down the V-Stars yet. Maybe keeping those in hand to make sure they're not taken away from him before he's able to utilize them, knowing he's going to need them late game. But I think the biggest highlight of this turn, no Espeon VMAX down yet, which means Nico, 9 in the Lost Zone already. Next turn we're probably going to see 10, you would imagine anyway, in this Lost Box deck. And if that VMAX doesn't come down, Star Requiem is active, meaning he's going to be able to take an easy prize anywhere that he likes. Easy prize or 2 prizes anywhere that he likes with that attack, being able to just knock out whatever it sees in front of it. And we see the Starbirth come off from Vinnie, looking at the Marnie and the DTE, putting those in hand. Giratina only needing 1 energy to attack now, or perhaps maybe wanting to attack with the Arceus, getting more energy on board. It's going to be interesting to see what line Vinnie takes here, but I imagine the Marnie is definitely going to be something that happens this turn.
Yeah, you want to attack with the Arceus here because putting a double turbo energy on Giratina and reducing the damage when you don't need to, it's never something you want to do. I love getting the KO while accelerating energy, and now there was a play there, so Vinnie could have just gone straight for the Espeon VMAX. I understand why he didn't. Espeon is easier to search. We did see him eyeing up an Ultra Ball for a moment, but I think you've nailed it with the Espeon. You need the Espeon, because as it stands, you are playing Radiant Gardevoir. Radiant Gardevoir means that Giratina's 280 attack does not KO Arceus, and that's amazing. If you don't get, there's the Espeon. So now Nico is not KOing the Arceus rather than just forcing him to use a V-Star power. So that Espeon, I'm going to be honest with you, Benji, right? Game 1, I was like, oh, you know, Espeon, that's kind of cute. And the more this game goes on, I'm like, Vinnie is losing this game terribly without Espeon. All 3 games would have been so much, well, game 1 couldn't really got worse. But game 2 would have been a loss without Espeon, no question.
Yeah, definitely. And the Arceus here, and we can see there the utilization of it. For those, we talked about it plenty of times, the energy has to be attached to the Pokemon to be able to protect it. So that Arceus getting the one on the Giratina it wants, but also making sure that Espeon has its own energy. It's happy to protect everyone else, but still needs an energy itself to be able to protect it from being taken down by Star Requiem. And a knockout there, taking 1 prize for Vinnie. However, I'm looking at the time now. We're going to get to a point where these players really need to speed up their stuff, get this game going, and try and take those big knockouts to close this out.
Yeah, I think we could be heading towards a tie. And yeah, you need the energy on the Espeon, because otherwise you're just putting down a free prize Pokemon that your opponent gusts up and gets 3 prizes, and that would be a very bad thing indeed.
Oh, that's great. You protected everything else, but I'll still have that, please. Thank you.
And I'm not seeing this game ending here. It looks like Nico is probably going to be turn 0, which means Nico needs to take 2 prizes this turn and next, which it's not possible because the Gardevoir stops Giratina's main attack taking a KO, and Espeon stops Star Requiem taking a KO, and then you need to do it again next turn. Vinnie is then going to have 2 turns to take 5 prizes, which also isn't possible. And this is what I was talking about in Game 2. And it's awkward because you can't say it was wrong to not scoop because there was still a chance. Nico was not out of the game. There was a chance. But in these best of 3s, I suppose the point I'm trying to make is there comes a point where it's not that you've lost, it's the risk of tying if you don't scoop is worse than the risk of, you know, kind of losing this game. You have to lose the game in order to give yourself enough time, even though there's still a chance, but it's kind of like, well, there's a 20% chance to win this game, but then there's an 80% chance I lose, and then there's a 50% chance to win game 3. That's just not good enough. So I do think, and obviously you're not running the numbers, that would be weird, but I'm saying there comes a point where you have to make that decision of, even though I've got a chance and I can see a route to victory, it's not likely enough to make it worth carrying on with this game. But we all have homes to get to. We can't have untimed tournaments. That would be a disaster.
No, I do want to get home this weekend. But me and Freya talking a little bit yesterday about what makes a good and a great tournament run, and those micro decisions you're talking about really highlight that. Knowing when to scoop early, knowing when to go quick, know when to play your resources, know when to overextend, when to stop, and those little tiny decisions add up over the day. And of course here we're going to see that maybe that choice not to scoop come back and really bite Nico here, and
there
we do see the tie. The fist bump in the middle we see so often, and both players keep at the cards. 7-1-2. Not a disrespectful record. I think both players will be okay with a draw here, but they are making the rest of the day a little bit more difficult.
Yeah, just getting a win round 1 when you start 7-1-1, getting a win be absolutely huge. There's only 2 spots available. There's 8 spots available. There are 2 players who have better records than Nico and Vinnie coming in. There's an 8-0-1 and an 8-1-0 coming in to cut, and then you go down to the 7-1-1s. But there are 6-2-1s there who are going to win. There's going to be a bunch of them that win this first round, because there's so many of them. And then it's going to be very, very close between the 7-2-1s and the 7-1-2s, and that gap gets bridged really, really quickly. I have seen plenty of players have a decent record, and if you want to be kind of guaranteed to get into top 8, you need to kind of cut at 9-0. If you cut at 9-0, yeah, it's kind of hard to not make top 8. Outside of that, you need to start stacking a few wins. But what we saw there was what we've seen all weekend. Nico is a great player of a great deck. His opponent, Vinnie, is a great player with a great deck. They both played extremely well, and we saw a great back and forth there.
Yes,
we saw the Espeon coming out. We saw Nico really playing his outs. And I think we also saw a great example of the good and the bad of the Lost Zone engine from Nico there. Yeah. Nico in game 1 was just rocking. And then we saw game 2, and there were little decisions. Things like losing that Snorlax, which wasn't ideal. That could have been a good single prize attacker. Instead, having to go for the Shred with a Giratina, which was not as good an attack. And we saw just little things. But then again, Vinnie's playing a 1-1 line of Espeon. You know, we're pointing out how big Espeon is in that matchup. It's a 1-1 line. It's really easy for one of them to be prized.
Yeah, definitely. I think at the start we thought that the ability was going to come in handy, but maybe Espeon not being utilised as an attacker. Slowly throughout the game it was having to be, which ended up being the deciding attack of the game, realistically, that Espeon hitting into the Giratina V. So lots of back and forth, lots of subplots in that as well, lots of different cards. You know, the Temple of Sinnoh had an opportunity to be a real big factor in that third game, unfortunately bumped straight away. But I would have liked to see where the game went if that Arceus wasn't able to get off that attack that turn, and Nico could then really establish herself in that game 3.
Yeah, that would have been very, very interesting. Both players could have had better game 3s, but it didn't work out in the end. And it's another one of those situations where I wanted to see that game conclude. I was really enjoying that match, and it was really shaping up nicely. And I think it's indicative of both the players and the format we've got here. We've got a lot of excellent players, but we've got a pretty open format, more so than I think we've had in a while. Yes, Palkia is still good. Things like Arceus, Pikachu are still good. Regigigas is coming up now. You've got, I think Mew is still very much around. And then you've got the new decks like Lost Box, Giratina Lost Box, Arceus Giratina. There's so much overlap here, but they are very much discrete decks. There is a lot that we can actually play around with in this format. And that kind of makes me happy. I mean, as somebody who's analysing the game, I love it when we have a format like this because it just makes things interesting. We've seen formats in the past where this was not the case. Gardevoir Gallade. So carry on.
Gardevoir Gallade. Mew VMAX, definitely in that little online era. I could not see a reason to even look at another card apart from Mew VMAX. That Meloetta absolutely dominating everything. I think when Palkia first came out as well, I think it's all we saw on stream for about 2 days at some of the NAC tournaments and some of the American regionals towards the end of the year as well. So, yeah, we definitely have had less diverse tournaments indeed, but this format, really enjoying it. Lots of different decks, but as we keep mentioning, and you just said then, lots of different variations of the same deck as well. Lots of tech cards. You know, we've seen one off past the peaks in Mew now all of a sudden. That's crazy.
That was amazing.
You know, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. I'm going to play Marnie Path now to try and disrupt my opponents. You know, the Temple of Sinnoh coming up in Giratina to try and combat those Regigigas, maybe the Arceuses as well. Regigigas turning up back out of nowhere, getting 4 placements in the top 8 a couple of weeks ago in Salt Lake City. So there's definitely a lot of diversity, and I still feel like there's a lot to be explored in this format as well. This is going to add another leaf to the cap of Lost Origins, and of course another European regional in Warsaw in a couple of weeks' time, where it's going to evolve again.
Well, actually, you mentioned Regigigas, and that's the next deck I want to pick up, right? I am obsessed with this Regigigas deck. I love it. It's fascinating to me. I love the fact that it's one of those gimmick decks that don't always work. By gimmick deck, I'm talking about these decks that are clearly meant to be played together with all these interactions. And Regigigas works beautifully because of things like Regigigas' ability and Regidrago, things of that nature. It works so much better than these similar kind of decks. And we see these kind of things in every set. But Regigigas really stands out. But in Salt Lake City, we saw 4 getting into top 8, and we saw 1 getting into top 4. And that was the winner of the top 8 Regigigas mirror match, and then it lost in top 4. Reggie beat nothing but Reggie in top cut in Salt Lake. We've now got another situation where our number 1 seed, cutting at 8-0-1, is a Regigigas deck. Dominic has got a fast track into top 8. I'm not saying Dominic will make top 8. Can't say that now. That would be ridiculous. Can say Dominic has got to be one of the favourites to take a top 8 spot. If Dominic does, can we see Reggie go further?
I think I would like to see it. You know, I think that Reggie, you'd think when 4 get into top 8, you'd expect one of them to be up there in the final, right? Just by odds, you know, half of it, you'd expect one to be there. And I think it deserved it. You know, a lot of great players there as well playing that deck. Some of America's greats taking that deck all the way to top 4. And so it would have been nice to see how it performed in the final. And of course, a bit different of a deck. I don't know, seeing Regigigas have a regional win would be something, one of the craziest things I've seen since my time playing. So, yeah, I think it'd be definitely great to say. And, you know, I think Dominic, he played very well on stream yesterday. His list is a little bit different as well. We were talking about no gust whatsoever.
No gusting, and he finished 8-0-1.
No gust whatsoever. So, I think that, you know, it's a little bit unique as well. I think it'd be really cool to see.
I would love it. Has had a very big win in Japan. It took down the Champions League. Regigigas has had gigantic results in Japan. Outside of Japan, we're still waiting for that big, you know, the big regional win. And it's definitely a good enough deck. It just kind of, are we going to get the right player? Are we going to get the right format? Are we going to get the right matchups? Because I'm still astounded, I think is the word I'm looking for, that we saw a player play no gusting and finish 8-0-1. You don't see decks that don't have gusting. I mean, the players who've been watching this stream weekend will have seen Boss's Orders over and over again. They will have seen Double Cross Switcher in a number of games. We even saw Chin Chow being played in that Mew v Union as kind of pseudo-gusting yesterday. And for a player to go 8-0-1 and just play no gusting, it's basically, it's like... We've had formats in the past where it's just, I will attack whatever's in front of me.
Boom.
And they're very rare formats we don't see very much. And that is not the format we're in. But Dominic's gone, no, I think we are.
Think we are, and Dominic's ears will be burning us talking about him and his Regigigas deck, which I'm sure, or we hope, should I say, we'll see coming up into the upper echelons of today. But for now, me and Ross, we're going to have a lovely break, and we will join you in round 11. Catch us soon for more Pokemon action.